This episode of Blue Grit Podcast is sponsored by Sons of Liberty Gunworks, proud law enforcement supporters.
If we find out that you're not a member, that doesn't mean that we're going to wash our hands of you. We're going to take care of you as best we can because that's what's right.
Yep.
And maybe we'll get a member out of that. I don't know. But it's the right thing to do.
Ooh, the karate chop. You got it. The karate chop.
All right, we're rolling. Hey, TMPA Blue Grit Podcast. We're back. Have a VIP guest on today with your host, Clint McNear, and
Tyler Owen.
that was confident. Oh, that sounded good.
You like
really
that?
Confident.
I said it with confidence.
With confidence. Before we kick off, please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Tell somebody about it. Share it.
Please. Tweet
it.
Mm-hmm. You said sweet it?
Tweet.
Oh, they said sweet it. No, tweet it.
I think I still have a little nacho in my mouth.
Yeah.
Just tweet it. Don't TikTok it.
We don't TikTok in the TikToking.
No. Introduce our guest to you.
It's a good friend of mine, El Presidente of the Texas Municipal Police Association, Sergeant Joe Tovar with New Braunfels Police Department. Welcome to the Blue Grit stage.
So thank you for allowing me to come on here. I didn't realize that you guys were wanting to end the podcast so quickly by having me on.
No, man, it means a lot for you to come on.
I don't even know what to call you. Is it Sergeant, President?
Joe.
Joe?
I like that.
Sergeant Joe.
I do need to clarify something, though. It's New Braunfels.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I'm glad you're telling me this because I'm moving to the area,
Yeah.
and so I need to know that. So it's not New Braunfels.
No. One S and no Z.
No, one S and no Z.
Have him tell you what county Jordanton is in.
Hey,
Yeah.
I learned that this week because I did the edits at Escosa.
Oh,
Thank you.
there you go.
I couldn't pronounce that last week in front of the sheriff. It was pretty embarrassing.
He put T's in it, and it was Atascota and Atas.
Well, while we're on that, it's New Bronze.
You already messed it up.
New Braunfels.
New Braunfels.
New Braunfels.
Yeah.
Okay.
Close enough.
Close enough. Is it Comal?
Yes.
Okay, Comal County. Because I used to say Comal. That's not how you pronounce it.
Either way.
Well, I got my ass jumped the other day when I was in Wimberley because I pronounced it wrong. And this elderly woman that graduated from New Braunfels.
There's only one S that's at the end.
Well, there's all these like different names. Man, I'm from East Texas. We say shit just normal.
I do like the way you say Comal. It's like you're got a little French in there.
Yeah. Well, anyway, she gave me a little lesson on how you pronunciate it. So
He's a Yankee moving from the north.
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, well, it is what it is.
You know how Yankees are.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. But no, man, you've always certain people, and so I'm not saying this about prior presidents, but with me dealing with prior administrations with different departments, sometimes we kind of were like, oh God, how is this person going to deal with power? And you've handled it well. I mean, you haven't changed who you are. You've never changed who you were as a person, and you were the president when I got hired full time. So this organization will never be the same.
Like reflecting back on maybe any mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not all of our decisions have been sound.
Yeah. So, but we wanted to have you come on and talk about your career. I think the most important thing is Clint can say this as employees. We get asked all the time, like, man, how did you get involved with TMPA? I'm sure you do too, being on the board. That's one thing we wanted to kind of highlight is how did you get introduced to law enforcement, but also how did you get introduced to TMPA, being on the board? What does that look like? And kind of give some advice to the listeners, the watchers, the viewers, and kind of give your career path with TMPA and what it looks like.
Let's kick it off with who's Joe? Where were you born? Who the heck is Joe?
So I was born in Dearborn, Michigan, and then
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pronounced deer. Sorry.
And then we spent a little time in Missouri, and then moved down to Medina County. I actually grew up in a small 1A school town, D'Hanis.
How old were you when you moved there?
We were about, I think I was in first grade.
From Michigan to D'Hanis, Texas. Well, that's a
my dad is originally from there, so that's why we moved down there. Went to high school there. Wasn't really a good student. Didn't really care for school. Was more interested in playing sports, playing baseball and playing football than anything else.
Yep.
Realized once I graduated high school that things became real. So I needed a job. Didn't have money. Didn't have money to go to college, so decided to join the Army. Enlisted in the Army and served 3 years at Fort Hood as a tanker. I scored just high enough on the ASVAB to stay out of the Marine Corps, so I'm good there.
You never liked crayons.
No.
Did you pick tanker? Did you go in open contract, or is that something you kind of always wanted to be a part of?
So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I needed to get out of D'Hanis and Medina County because there wasn't really a whole lot there, unless you have a family that like has a ranch or something like that. You're kind of on your own.
Yeah.
There is a big brick factory there. Well, I say big, but it does employ several people there, but there's not really a big future there. So I knew I needed to get out of that area, and so that was my out. Was joining the Army, and when I went to talk to the recruiter, actually, let me backtrack. When I took the ASVAB, I took it when I was a junior in high school, and I really didn't have aspirations of joining the military at that time. I just took the ASVAB to get out of class, and so I didn't score very well on it, and I wanted to retake it once everything became real when I was a senior. But my recruiter was like, no, you'll be good with this score here. And he was a tanker too, apparently. I wish I knew who he was so we could have a little chat because he told me that the tanks were air conditioned. And
shit.
They were not. They are now.
I'm shocked to hear a recruiter
lied to a recruit.
Didn't give you 1,000% accurate story.
Yeah. So when I joined, it was in August of '96 is when I shipped out to basic training, and they weren't really doing bonuses at that point, but I did get a $3,000 bonus. So they made a big deal out of that because there weren't very many people like now that are getting bonuses. But Uncle Sam really enjoys your bonus more than you do. He takes a big chunk of that. So when I got done with basic training in AIT, I got stationed at Fort Hood here in Killeen and spent my time there. Throughout my time in the military, I thoroughly enjoy knowing that I did that. It was a huge accomplishment for myself. But I knew enough to know that big Army wasn't for me, especially being at Fort Hood. If you talk to anybody that's been there, there's just too many people there. You're a number.
Yeah.
And big Army doing big Army stuff, just not doing the smartest things. When I was in, we got shipped off to Kuwait as a part of Operation Desert Shield, I believe.
Shield, yeah, before Storm.
So it was actually after Desert Storm, but it was the show of force that we had there consistently until the next wars that came along. We did a 3-month rotation there, and one of the last straws for me was you're supposed to go to NTC, which is in Fort Irwin, California, as a kind of train up to going overseas. Well, we did it backwards. We went to the desert. We went to Kuwait. And then
did your workup after you got back?
Yes. I'm like, why are we going? We're not going anywhere. We already did this.
That makes 100% military sense.
Yes. But for me, it's like, you know what? No, I'm done with this. And I was actually going to re-enlist as an MP, but we were short on numbers and the commander wasn't going to allow me to re-enlist as an MP. He said, you can re-enlist as a tanker or you can get out. I said, all right, I'm going to get out. So went back home, got a job at the Medina County Sheriff's Office as a jailer. And looking back on it, I can't really tell you that that was my lifelong dream to be in law enforcement. I'm sure, just like any other kid, you think about that.
Right.
But I can't tell you that, yeah, as soon as I come out of the womb there, yeah, I want to be a cop.
Did something spark you to consider the MP field?
I think it was just there seemed to be more movement as far as promotional opportunities and different job aspects because being so short-staffed in the unit that I was in it worked out for me, but it also didn't work out for me because back then when we would go to the field and do our firing engagements and qualifications, the tanks had to drive up onto a berm, and the berms had a sheer cliff in the front of them. So if you drove too far forward, you were going to drive off that little cliff. And people would freak out and slam on the brakes. Well, even though the main gun, when it's engaged, it's going to stay on target. Everything else inside the tank is going to move. So if you picture the gunner and the tank commander on their gun sight, and you're slamming on the brakes, you're slamming their head forward. Some people would get black eyes and busted up in the bridge of their nose if it hit too hard. Well, I got good at driving, so I got stuck on the commander's tank. And you have a 4-man crew. We were so short-staffed, we didn't have a permanent loader on our tank, so you're down to 3. On the commander's tank, he's the captain of the company. He doesn't do the maintenance of the tank, so you're down to 2.
Oh, wow.
The gunner on mine, who's the supervisor of the tank in that situation, is a sergeant, and my sergeant got into a pretty significant wreck where he was in ICU for like 6 months. So I was on that tank by myself for almost a year.
Wow.
Which is good if you look back on it and you see what age you are and how much responsibility you have at that point and at that age. I think it was a huge accomplishment, but it also really hurt me because I didn't get to move into the next position for me would have been gunner. And I think they realized that a little bit too late because I only got to go to one gunnery as a gunner. And by then I had already made the decision to get out. I think maybe if I'd been moved in there a little bit quicker, I probably would have stayed in at least one more contract.
Yeah.
So got out and went to Medina County. Is that as a jailer or deputy? Or?
As a jailer.
How long did you do there?
I stayed there a total of 8 months. And while going there, Southwest Texas Junior College out of Uvalde, they were talking about, kicking around the idea of having a remote academy there in Hondo. And so once I found out about that, I started working to coordinate that. And I initially had kind of a handshake deal with the sheriff at the time. It was Wesley Scott. That I would be able to, he would work with my schedule because it was going to be in a 6-month-long academy. We were going to do shorter hours, so that made it was going to be like 6 in the evening to 10 or something like that. So it was going to be
a part-time time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then everybody else found out about what was going on.
Oh,
and so they were like, oh, I want to do the academy too. And so it turns out he wasn't going to be able to work with my schedule. I don't blame him because everybody else is going to want the same thing. So I left there and started working for a company called YSI. They were a juvenile detention facility there in Hondo. They're no longer there, but so I became a juvenile detention officer. And
Ooh, I bet that's challenging.
You know, it wasn't quite as bad. We didn't have it as bad as some other facilities, and I did a lot of transports for them. They would have 2-man transports, and we'd be driving all over the state of Texas. I remember going all the way up to Palo Pinto and was at Eagle Lake.
How old were you at this time?
20, 21, somewhere around there.
Oh, wow.
It's funny, we've had a lot of folks on that had jail, either county jail or municipal jail experience. Yeah. And he and I both worked in a jail before, and you don't see it at the time, because I didn't see it. I'm like, dude, this sucks. I'm just ready to. I don't want to work in a jail. But the experience you have dealing with you're stuck with those people, and understanding how to communicate and de-escalate, and you got to get along with them because they're probably going to be back there when I get back to work tomorrow. Whereas in patrol, sack them up, drop them off, and see you, dude. I don't have to deal with you again. And it's interesting now, looking back, how invaluable some of that experience can be working in the jail. It may not seem invaluable at the time, but and that's kind of been you feel like that was a good stepping stone to start for you?
Absolutely. For those reasons that you talk about. When I was there, we had just opened up the current jail that's there now. And so apparently in jail or prison land, if you move into a new facility, you have to christen it. And I guess the way they do that is by having a riot.
Oh, wow.
So the way this one was set up, you had a long hallway that led down, and on either side there were segregation cells where there was just individuals in those cells that led to like an octagon shape, or surrounding that octagon, you were seated at a desk by yourself, and then separated by the community pods, if you will. Well, and part of their riot, if you will, was to try to break through the plexiglass that separated them from you. And they were actually pretty successful. They almost breached the glass. And I can tell you it's pretty unsettling being the person down there at that desk. The only other person that was there at the time was the guy in the control room. And he's way down at the other end of the hall. All he can do is watch what's taking place. You could call in deputies if you needed to, but luckily we didn't get to that point. But all you have is an SL-20 and a prayer.
Yeah.
It's funny you bring it up. The other day, my wife was talking about buying all females in the family these devices you wear on your belt or you wear on a purse. And when you pull this deal out, it squeals. And I mean, it is deafening, insanely loud. Well, she was excited to show me she bought them for everybody. I was like, yeah, it's neat. She goes, oh, what's the deal? I said, no, I've seen them before. She said, where have you seen them? And I said, well, working in the jail, that's what they gave us. And after a few weeks working in the jail, I'd be the only jailer in Plano PD in early 90s. I'd be the only jailer on duty on deep nights. And jailers weren't allowed to have a real police radio. And they gave us this deal. And we'd have some bad dudes come in there at times. And I had help until the officer was through booking them in. And we had a really cool supervisor named Janet Chapeton. Shout out to the Chapeton family. But I went into her one day, and it reminds me of the movie The Other Guys, where I think he gives them a rape whistle.
Yeah.
But I went into Janet's office one day. I was like, hey, I'm here most nights alone, and I have this thing. And she's like, yeah, so you can get help. I said, most nights I'm the only one in the entire police department. So it's really good, and I'm going to make everybody mad, all the prisoners pissed off with this loud noise. Who's coming to help me? And she's like, we've never thought of that. And I was like, so then we got approval to have real policemen, big boy radios, but sitting in that pod and surrounded by all of that, it's an uneasy feeling. And the night it dawned on me, if this goes sideways, I'm going to, hey guys, you better watch out, or I'm going to pull this and make a loud squealing noise. It's not going to change anything, but I'm going to make a loud noise. It is a freaking unsettling thought.
Absolutely.
Well, I can't tell you how over my career, moving from Dallas to East Texas, the communications aspect with dealing with inmates in my CID career is when I really noticed it. Dealing with inmates and speaking with them during the interview process is when I really started to begin to, really value having that experience in the jail setting. I saw it on patrol, but really in CID, dealing with interviews, the lingos, is when I really started to see that. And I think honestly, if I could give any bit of advice to anybody starting in law enforcement, number one, it would be to start in the jails. But just be careful when you do that, because you don't want to make any mistakes and then it follow you during your career would be another bit of advice. But man, it's just so crucial to get that experience as you start your careers. But the jail setting is just, you really can't put a price tag on it, honestly.
So what led you from the youth facility to your next step, New Braunfels?
Yeah, so I went through the academy there in Hondo, but it was through the college in Uvalde, and realized that at some point I realized I didn't want to be an officer there in Hondo, and that there's not a shot at Hondo or Hondo PD at all. But I had family that lived there, and it's a real small town. I didn't want me doing my job to affect my family any more than it already naturally does. And of course, I do have some extended family that's not necessarily on the same side of the law that I am. And I didn't want to, I just didn't want to create any more conflict that doesn't need to be there.
Sure. That's a mature thought at 21 or?
Well, plus the pay was better in New Braunfels. Still is than Hondo.
Yeah.
They're unfortunately not adding very many officers or bringing up their pay where it needs to be.
So finished the academy, applied at New Braunfels. What year was that?
So I got hired on in February of 2001. I still remember looking in the I guess it was the San Antonio Express News newspaper and found the ad there, and that's how I applied.
At New Braunfels.
Close, yeah.
That's
Getting
close.
better.
It's close. Keep practicing.
You took a shot.
Yankee.
Oh, God.
By the way, do you have your keys on you?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I see where this is going. Yeah, they're in the table in there.
You sure?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, promise. We're not in Cedar Park, by the way. Go ahead.
So you just finished academy. Did New Braunfels put you? Did you have to go back through academy?
No. Started FTO right away. All they required was you have your basic peace officer, and then you start going through their FTO program, and yeah.
Did you have a contact, or did you know anybody there, or were you a lone man flying alone, didn't know a soul?
Nope, didn't know anybody. I think I'd only been to New Braunfels one time.
Wow.
Prior to that, going to Schlitterbahn, and that was it. I still remember, like, for the first 6 months I worked there, I drove the same route to and from work because I didn't want to get lost.
Oh, God.
That's awesome.
Where were you living at?
Just an apartment complex there in New Braunfels.
Okay.
But complete opposite side of town from where the station was.
That's crazy.
I took Garland's test. Did surprisingly better than I anticipated, and got a call the next day. You need to get there, turn in an application. So I borrowed my mom at a nice Maxima that would fly. So I'm flying, trying to get there where I thought it was. Garland PD pulls me over. He's like, "Hey, man, you're flying." I said, "Sir, I know. I've got an application. I'm actually applying to be Garland." He's like, "No kidding." I said, "Yes, sir." So I'm hoping to be in y'all's academy. He's like, "Man, all right. That's all right. Get your ass going." I was like, "Whoa, sir, before you leave, where's the police station at?"
That's awesome.
I have no idea. I thought I did, and apparently I don't. You got to. It's weird to move into a new place and try and do police.
Yeah,
work.
tell me about it. Yeah. Yeah. And get stuff stolen and leave your keys in the cars. And
Well, you're not in Kansas anymore.
yeah, I'm not in Kansas anymore. So I guess you didn't have to go through the FTO process?
No, I did.
Oh, you did have to go through the, okay. So how difficult was it for New Braunfels? Being the new kid on the block, not knowing the area?
Looking back on it, I'm sure it was a huge struggle because, not having that background of listening to the radio and then trying to figure out where streets are, where things are at, and you don't have GPS as readily available as you do now.
Yeah.
And then, you complicate it even more because New Braunfels is a little bit more unique. I think when it got laid out, it was done by a drunk German on a donkey. Because north streets don't actually always run north and south, and same thing with east and west. So it kind of gets confusing when you have a crash at a perpendicular intersection and there's north on both sides of them. It kind of makes you wonder, well, which way is up?
Yeah.
We have a lot of explorers that watch, and you bring up a great point. I thought I was a multitasker until I started FTO, and you're trying to read a map, listen to the radio, look at street signs, not make your FTO pull out his notepad and start making notes about you. And it's almost like sensory overload if you've never been in, and most people can't be in that predicament. But even just listening to the radio when it's so much chatter on a Friday or Saturday night, to the young men and women out there looking for it, hone your multitasking, because that was my biggest challenge.
Yeah.
The geography I studied enough, but multitasking, man, it's a huge, and it's not a natural thing to do. Yeah. We tell people, won't you focus? Well, that's not what multitasking is.
That's still a real problem. We just had a trainee wash out because he couldn't multitask.
That's sad, man. And to go through all that training for nothing, you know.
Well, it'll get you killed if you don't.
Well, yeah, it's true.
It'll get you killed if they don't. A lot of people take that wrong, but you got to be aware of where you're at and how to tell and where everyone else is, and it's not a personal issue. It's to keep somebody from getting themselves killed.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying that, but it's just sad.
I understand.
It's just sad that at some point you got to cut the training out. So.
Yep.
At what point did you get involved with the local association there at New Braunfels and see a need that's kind of where or was it one of those typical, as we've all seen it, where you kind of get dumped into it and it was kind of your time to carry that flag? Was it the same situation for you?
I've looked back on that time and I can't really tell you exactly when it clicked for me. But before that, I don't remember exactly when I was sat down and had a conversation about TMPA and the reason why you should join.
Right.
At some point I did. And I think the two guys that probably would have had that conversation with me are still there at the PD right now. And both of them one of them was my FTO and the other one worked on the shift that we were on. So, I credit those guys for having that conversation with me.
Yeah. Did you have any legal protection when they sat you down to visit with you about it?
No.
Wow.
I mean, I didn't even know enough to know that I needed it.
Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of folks out there strapping a gun and badge on every day that don't have it. They just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody did not know this the other day. I actually called, the legal call jumped at like 4 a.m. the other day. The guy had Law Shield. And for those that are listening right now that do not know this, if you have Law Shield or thought you had Law Shield, they do not exist for law enforcement. They do not have law enforcement coverage. So if you thought you had U.S. Law Shield, they don't cover cops anymore for what we do.
They put you in the civilian LTC program without notifying you.
Yeah.
And so you have the same legal protection as a license to carry folks, which doesn't include admin,
right,
all the other things that you need.
Yeah, so the guy that I talked to did not know that. So that's not the same as TMPA. So just throwing it out there to you guys.
So a couple of guys, old heads, sat you down, visited with you about TMPA. You got some legal insurance, legal protection. Was that when you started looking at your local association and kind of got involved, or what kicked off your interest in the labor arena?
So if I had to put something on it, I would probably say when I first started working there in New Braunfels, it was not the place that it is today. I can tell you that. We didn't have good history at that point. I don't remember exactly when the article was written, but there's an article, and I'm sure somebody at work still has a copy of it. But the tagline or the headline of the article was "Sex, Lies, and Drive-Bys," and they weren't talking about cartels or gangs or anything like that. They were talking about people that wore a badge and worked for that agency.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I've never heard that story.
And so there were some people that needed to go, and shortly after I got hired on, we got a different city manager, and he started cleaning house, and he started by I think the chief was asked to retire, if I remember correctly, and he did. And we got a new chief in from actually came to us from Cortez, Colorado. Great chief. Love that guy. Still wish he was there. No offense to our current chief. Our current chief is really good too.
Yeah, I can edit that out.
But no. Chief Johnson was really good. And he started really cleaning house, and it needed to happen. And once that started happening and got rid of, they turned themselves deadwood, and they were right because they were holding us back. Once we got rid of that, we were able to move forward and turn the department into what it is now. But as part of that, the association has always existed, and in some associations it kind of ebbs and flows as far as their activity or existence even.
Yep.
And I don't remember exactly what year, but we've steadily continued to be active and advocate for the officers when the chain of command doesn't necessarily help them out or fails them outright, which is the reason why associations exist to begin with.
Yep.
And so we've steadily increased our activity.
What year did you get? Was it pretty quick after you got on? You got involved, or at least became a member and kind of somewhat active with the local?
Yeah, I think I probably joined the local about the same time that I joined TMPA, and I've been a member ever since.
What led to you wanting to see a bigger picture and step on to state board?
So we've had three of us now. I'm obviously the current member from the department, but Craig Christofferson, he was on the board as a regional director, and then I was on his shift as a corporal while he was on the board, and we would talk every once in a while, nothing specific, but just talking about the stuff that the board does and why it exists and why it's important. And coming to conferences around that time to get to see the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I say behind the scenes. You don't really get to see what TMPA does at the conference. I mean, don't get me wrong. Conference. I look forward to that every year. It's kind of like my reset, if you will. But you really don't get a true understanding of what TMPA does behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But once Craig was done with being on the board, then Steve Hanna came on the board as a region director, and I don't remember how many years he did, and then he decided it was time to step down. So I was still really active with our local and doing things with TMPA as a member. You can sign up at that time to do legislative and other boards to help out throughout the year. So I ran whenever Steve Hanna was done with being on the board, and the year that I got on, I think there was eight or nine of us that came on the board. That was in 2012.
Wow.
As a region director, and had a great time. The people that you meet by being on the board is incredible. You really get to see, when people talk about the brotherhood, at some point at your agency, and you may not experience what the true brotherhood is supposed to be about. It's not until you have a critical incident, like what Justin Ellis talked about in his incident, and I'm sure Claudia talked about in hers.
Yeah.
Just the run-of-the-mill, day-to-day stuff, you don't really get to see that. But I think one of the things that you get to experience by being on the board is you get a better understanding of just how active our state is and how bad things are for the officers, some working conditions,
Yep.
But also how they get treated by the public that they're serving, by the elected officials that are supposed to be upholding the laws, and even sometimes their own administrations. We do hear some cases when someone gets denied coverage. We'll hear their case and make a decision on whether or not we're going to cover it. But one of the first things that really opened my eyes was the email strings that we get. Sometimes it's pretty constant of the critical incidents that our members are involved in, and it's not always members. That's one thing that I love about this organization is, yes, we want you to be a member, but if we find out that you're not a member, that doesn't mean that we're going to wash our hands of you. We're going to take care of you as best we can because that's what's right.
Yep.
And maybe we'll get a member out of that. I don't know. But it's the right thing to do.
You mentioned being a part of the local, and then kind of it's eye-opening to see what really goes on. That's one thing that stuck with me. Tyler and I were friends. I was the field rep. He was the local president. We would interact. He was a go-getter. We were needing a part-timer, brought him on part-time. And it really stuck with me after he came on part-time because he's like, I really felt like I knew a lot and I was seeing a lot. But when you open up your lens and you're now looking at the entire state of what really goes on in this huge picture of the vast amount of, like you were talking about, issues and just shit going on, he's like, man, it's really eye-opening to expand your lens outside of, my whole world was Garland for so long. And, man, when you look out and we're dealing with issues in the Panhandle and, on the coast, and it's messy, and it's seeing how sausage is made is messy. But to your point, man, we're involved in all of it, and we got people burning up the road all the time. We have board members showing up to try and help and calling and checking on members, and we're right in the middle of the sausage making, no matter what part of the state it is. And it was really eye-opening, and I guess I never thought of it, but the first couple of years T.O. was on, he would call me. He's like, dude, this is really broad opening, seeing all of this going on. And I never really thought of it that way, but it's true. And for our listeners, you mentioned you became a regional director. Our board is composed of 18 board members elected by the members, the executive board, and regional directors. You became a regional director first, and our state is divided up into various regions
10.
Around the state.
Yeah, 10.
And then the executive board, and it's all the board of directors, but there's regional directors and executive board. And so you kind of stepped on initially to get your feet wet as a regional director.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah. And you can technically, at the conference, you can run as a one of the state positions, like a treasurer or secretary or one of the VPs. But
if you'll nominate me, I'll nominate you.
Yeah, you do it.
All right.
But I think the proper way to go about it is to become a region director. That way, you have some responsibilities, but not nearly as much as the executive board does.
And it's probably a great way to figure out, is this really for me? Because, like you said, the email chain, the phone calls, it's not I'm going to step on and be a regional director, and it may take up 10 minutes a month of my time.
The fiscal responsibility. I mean, you guys are like the city council or the commissioner court of this entire organization.
It's easy for you to say.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't spit it out fast enough. I had
Good thing
Scotia.
Again, good thing it wasn't
New
a
Braunfels.
Scotia.
Yeah, New Braunfels. I said it that time. I'm not an idiot, I promise. Viewers, watchers, listeners, I promise.
What I've really liked about my entire time of being on the board is I think it's helped me. Being on the local has helped me through my time being on the TMPA board, and my time on the TMPA board has helped me on the local side as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you see some of the games that get played by administrations in other parts of the state. We talk about it. Other board members talk about what's going on in their areas, and interactions with field reps and interaction with members. You take that back to your local, so it does help you. An example of that is a couple of years ago, council had approved us for, like 4 officers and a supervisor, and our budget runs from October 1 on. Well, what our city management liked to do was, once the budget's approved and the money's there from October 1, but they won't let you start the hiring process until January.
So they can sit on that money.
Yeah, you have that salary savings. So if something comes up during the rest of the year, instead of having to go back to council for a budget adjustment, which makes them look bad, totally understand it. But in our case, it can take 6 months to hire somebody. So we're already behind the 8 ball as it is. And then you make it even worse just to save your ass.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I credit TMPA and my opportunity to be on the board to help me in that aspect, because we saw that when we went to council members and pointed out to them that this was going on, and every one of them was like, "Oh, I thought y'all had already hired them," because that was their belief. And I mean, they should be able to trust that city management is going to do what they're told to do,
Right.
but they don't always do it.
That's right.
In the time that's expected of them.
When you make a great point about networking, you can jump on an email, send out, "Hey, is anybody experiencing this?" And you may get 10 or 12 replies back or ideas, or, "Hey, here's our policy. Here's how we're doing it." And conference registration is open. And if you can't serve on the board or don't have a desire or don't have the time, you can come to conference and do the same thing. There's a lot of people from across the state that will be at the TMPA conference every year. And it's a great opportunity to sit around with some other local leaders and be like, "Hey, man, how are you guys navigating this issue?" Or, "How does your local board deal because we're having a huge issue?" And our conference is a great way to do it. The conference registration is open now, and I would really encourage everyone come to conference this year and hang out with El Presidente, Sergeant Joe Tovar.
Yeah, absolutely. The conference, like I said, it's something that I look forward to every year. It's kind of like a recharge for me because, at the very least, you realize that your department isn't necessarily the most screwed up. There are others out there that are more screwed up than yours.
No doubt.
And then in other aspects, it's the same game, just different faces.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So you get to realize that, but it is a good way to unplug, but also network with other officers across the state, and in many cases from across the country, because we bring in some really good speakers and trainers to talk to our members about their experiences in different states. So you realize that Texas isn't that messed up. It could be worse. It could be California, or up in the Northeast. So,
Yep.
Give us probably the most memorable thing, and you might have several, the most memorable story since being on the board of TMPA,
Other than meeting Tyler.
other than meeting me.
yeah, okay. No, that's it.
Well, yeah, let's wrap it up. That's a wrap. Yeah, thank you for coming on.
I think it would have to be our response to Harvey. I got to be a part of some of the group that went to Houston to help those guys out.
You want to kind of expand upon that, or because I know that Clint can't even talk about it without getting emotional.
Is
If you
that
can't,
Harvey?
or was it the other hurricane?
I think Harvey was the one before where we deployed to Victoria. But I know which one, where Houston was underwater, basically. The one you're referencing.
Yeah, well, I
Years
remember I went
ago?
there with Dick, and we went to Sugarland, if I remember correctly.
Worked out of a station or somewhere over there, yeah.
But it's just like situations like that where it's
Maybe
way.
Ida.
It may have been. Tell us about it, though.
So I'm just one of the volunteers that was allowed to drive one of the trucks to cart food and necessities. I mean, when you go to work and it's raining, right, you don't really think that at the end of your shift that you're not going to have anything, literally anything left to go back home to. And these officers over there, that's exactly what happened to a lot of them. And so we were able to, through our network, get some of those basic necessities, even, food, water, clothing, shirts, underwear, socks,
Yeah.
toiletries. I mean, if you put yourself in the shoes of the officers that were responding to those incidents, it's it's unimaginable that I mean, we just had a member lose everything.
Yeah.
In a fire.
Lost an entire fire. Yeah. Yeah.
Literally everything is gone.
When I started here, I knew we responded to events like that. I didn't know the magnitude, and I grew up in North Texas, so I've never been around a hurricane. And when Harvey hit, they called and said, "Hey, our emergency response unit is activated. You need to head south." And I'm like, "Well, I think there's a hurricane." And they said, "Yeah, everybody's headed to Victoria." And I was like, "Pretty sure there's a hurricane down there." So I get in the TMPA truck, and just before Victoria, I drive through it. Well, it'd been on land for, I don't know however long that period of time is. So it had diminished down, but it scared the hell out of me driving through it. I've never been around, it'd be like somebody from Hawaii, and we try to talk to them about tornadoes. I mean, they just don't know anything about it. And so I was a little bit underwhelmed with our emergency response. In day 2 or 3, I'm in the TMPA truck. I've got it loaded down literally with socks and underwear and undershirts. And we're somewhere between Victoria and the coast. I don't know where. And we knew there was supposed to be a large regional command post set up. And I'm driving down a road, and there is a destroyed SUV, police SUV, sheriff's SUV, blocking the road as a barrier. And there's this young sheriff's deputy standing in the road, sopping wet. I think it's 2 days after the hurricane. I pull up, and I'm not going to get through this without crying, but pull up and said, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And he's like shell-shocked, like World War II, you see. And he said, "Okay, sir." And I said, "How's your house?" He said, "I don't know." And I said, "How's your family?" "I don't know. I think they're safe." And I said, "Do you have a house to go back to?" "I don't know." And I said, "Do you need anything?" And he said, "I don't even know what I need." And we were supposed to bust these bundles of socks and underwear and give out a pair of underwear and a pair of socks. And I said, "Buddy, I don't have much to give you, but I can give you some underwear and some socks and an undershirt." And he starts bawling like I had offered him $1 million. And I was like, I'm not breaking up these bundles. So I started just handing him socks and underwear. And you would have thought literally we were giving him the lottery. I mean, the winning ticket to the lottery is balling. And I thought, my God, when you're at a point in your life where a pair of socks and a pair of underwear, that's a low spot in your life. And, man, after that, I was like, if we need to deploy, let's go. And it's to your point. When somebody's lost everything and we can come in, and a pair of socks doesn't make a damn bit of difference in his life. But at that moment it did. It meant everything in the world to him, clearly. But whoever the genesis of starting the process of us doing that was smarter than me, because I was like, it's stupid. We're going to go drive around and go to these floods or go to a fire. And it may not mean a lot to somebody, but it means a whole hell of a lot to them.
But that's what makes it awesome, and that's what makes probably the most rewarding about being a part of this organization, is that you're showing up representing 32,000 brothers and sisters of law enforcement. And we as the employees probably see it way more than the board, but we are the extension of them. And we get to see it front line and center. And we get to deliver that love that they are basically making as far as the financial decisions, every quarter. And I'll be honest with you, I've done a lot of cool shit in my lifetime. God has blessed me over and over. I've got a wonderful wife who puts up with my bullshit daily, as y'all are well aware.
You definitely outkicked your coach.
Oh, there's no doubt. Got 2 beautiful children. But for whatever reason, man, you and I met. I got thrown into a local association. You and I met, and I've been blessed with this opportunity with TMPA, and I thank God every day for it, because we get to affect. There's so many lives that we get to affect every single day. Simple phone calls that members call in, it's life changing to them, and I recognize it, and all of our field reps recognize it, as well as you do too. So
the weird part about it, when I got started here, I got into the role to go fight for members. Like, he and I met because I got his chief ran out of town, and I thought that would be fulfilling, helping that probably 24-year-old deputy as he sat on the middle of nowhere with nothing, crying over a pair of socks and underwear. That's 100 times more rewarding to me, or fulfilling, maybe not rewarding, fulfilling, than getting a nut job chief, because we get one ran out and there's 40 others pop up and it's a problem. If TMPA made a small difference in that young deputy's life for those few moments of his misery, that's 1,000,000 times more fulfilling than anything else we can do, and was interesting to see or learn in this role.
Absolutely. And hearing that story, it makes me think about what officers and deputies and troopers, if you're in law enforcement, what you are, whether you think about it or not, what you're prepared to do anytime you go to work. And usually that's, you're thinking of yourself last, if you even do. And in some incidents, you're prepared to lay down your life for somebody else, and someone else that may not even be grateful that you're there.
Like in Dallas.
Exactly.
So one of the things about you personally, and I think you're aware of it, but you're a hugely compassionate guy, and everybody has like their personality traits or quirks or personality traits that people understand. Oh, that guy's huge into guns. That guy's huge into hunting. That guy's whatever. Anybody that knows Joe, or it seems knows that mental health and being aware of taking care of our fellow men and women in law enforcement. What sparked, because that's kind of your legacy to me as a president. Every president kind of has a legacy. Is that just who Joe is? Is there things in your life that built that up? Is that something that evolved during your police career? Where'd Joe, the fighter for everyone, come from?
So it's no secret that if you're in law enforcement, you're probably going to come across a critical incident here or there. And you're not going to, if you do any length of time in this career, you're not going to come out of it the exact same way you went into it. Mm-hmm. And usually that's not a good thing. Because it's been probably 13 years ago now, we had one of our sergeants commit suicide. And at some point I had worked with him, both when I was a corporal and before he had promoted to sergeant. He was a detective. And he was a detective when I first came on. So when I did a rotation in CID, I'd come across him, and he was a very funny guy. He'd have you in stitches all the time. Not telling the lame jokes that T.O. tells us all the time. But then he promoted to sergeant, and he had issues going on in his personal life and personally as well. Apparently he was in quite a bit of pain. He had some back issues constantly causing him pain. And then he was going through a divorce at the time. And I still remember the afternoon getting the phone call telling us that it happened. If you've never experienced that within your department, I can tell you it's a very polarizing issue. You're going to have two different sides of the fence. Because it's kind of I don't know if you would call it a gray area, but some people want to treat it like a line of duty death where, we do the full military honors, and there's others that say no, you tarnish the image of law enforcement by doing that, or you diminish the sacrifice that other officers have made that have been killed in the line of duty by an assailant kind of thing.
And sometimes those are deeply divided.
Absolutely.
Those opinions.
And our department was no different. I don't know what the right answer is to that, but what sticks in my mind is you can't forget all of the great work that some of those people have done.
Yeah.
And you don't know exactly what it is that they're going through that led them down the path to where they said, I can't take it anymore. Only they know, and the people that are really close to them that eventually will, realize what happened. Because inevitably what happens afterwards is people say there's no signs, and 9 times out of 10 there's signs. It's just we don't either pick up on them or we ignore them, but a lot of times they're there.
Or we empower them. I know you're struggling. Let's go drinking.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we lose enough, too many first responders, specifically law enforcement, to people just willingly wanting to do harm to us because of the uniform that we wear and the oath that we take. We don't need to be making it worse by taking ourselves out.
Yep.
But at some point, you need to realize that a couple of years ago, I came across Travis Howes. I know you attended some training.
Yep, it was a great, outstanding presentation.
I don't remember exactly how I came across his book, but I read his book and then I started listening to his podcast. And what he talks about in there is that there may be significant critical incidents that trigger you to have issues, whether it be full-on PTSD or PTS.
PTS.
There's no D.
Right.
I don't have a disorder.
Yeah.
I'm screwed up as hell, but I don't have a disorder, my God.
But more than likely, it's more micro, where a little bit of an incident from here sticks with you. You don't really acknowledge it, that it's affecting you, but it's there in your brain. And at some point, it's going to come out. It's just like, if you fill up this cup and you put the lid on there, but you're still filling it up, eventually it's going to come out. And I was listening to another podcast. It may have been a Jocko podcast. They talked about this guy who had some shrapnel in him because he had gotten shot. It could have been one of ours. I remember listening to
disappointed to hear you.
Too many podcasts.
Disappointed to hear you listen to other podcasts. We thought we were exclusive. This was.
But what happened with that individual is, he got shot multiple times, and some of the fragments that were stuck in his body, and the doctors didn't want to remove them. But eventually they worked themselves out. And when I heard that, I was like, you know what? That's the exact same thing that happens to us. Because eventually it's going to come out. And
whether you want it to or not.
Exactly. And we need to do that in the most healthy way possible. And it's not by ending your life, because, what happened with our guy is he left now a widow, because they weren't divorced yet, but 2 sons that were teenagers at the time. So you're hurting more people than
Right.
You're coming up with a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah. My biggest thing with it is that, we preach about it's not okay to be okay on Monday, and then we condemn the suicide, on Tuesday. So it's like we need to, there's not really a good balance. And I think we're still navigating through this as law enforcement, military. We've said this for years. Military's done a really good job of identifying mental illness and how they kind of navigate through this. And, we're still kind of catching up. There are light years ahead of us. So I think that you, being in your position with TMPA, taking that leap, kudos to you for, this. I think every president kind of focuses on what their mission is for that year. So, hey, hats off to you for doing that this year and kind of focusing in on what your mission is for this year for you as president. Because I think other board members recognized it. I know me as an employee did. I know he did. And I think that we're going to all kind of continue to at least try to, focus in on that as we kind of continue on.
And it takes leaders like you, Chief Eddie Garcia at Dallas PD. It takes people with some intestinal fortitude to talk about a difficult subject, because my whole life, everybody in my family's in law enforcement. We're told to rub dirt on it. You know, don't be a wuss, pick it up and go on down the road. And I think it takes a real man. We used to say, well, you're a sissy and, you know, be a real man. And I think it takes a real man to stand up in front of a crowd and say, I'm friggin' broke and I am struggling. That's a whole lot more tough, manly decision to make than I'll just go get drunk and hide every day, or I know my friend's struggling, so I'll take him to the bar drinking. I'm like, well, that's not fixing the problem. Right. And the two legacies I appreciate that you leave, except when we nominate you and you get reelected as president again, is Joe. Joe's big on the mental health, and he's unashamed about it and makes everybody aware of it. But the other thing that was cool, like at our last staff meeting, Joe wanted everyone that would choose to read to have a copy of Extreme Ownership. And our world, nobody wants to accept ownership for anything, and nobody wants to, and you don't have to have a title to be a leader. Everybody you can be a 2-year officer in a small agency. You're a leader. People are going to look to you or the community's going to look to you on a call. And I was super pumped to see you share your passion about extreme ownership with the employees here and help mold and navigate. I wish everyone in our country would read that book.
I appreciate that. And I don't know where I picked this up at, but I truly believe that whether you're just an officer at your department or a board member at your local, or even a board member here at TMPA or an employee at TMPA, we all have a duty, and it's our job to leave this place better than we found it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that TMPA was messed up when I got on the board. I'm not saying that at all, but we all have the capability, I believe, to be a leader. Sometimes we just need to unlock it. And you may not completely relate to every story or anecdote that's in extreme ownership, but I find it very relatable, mostly because they talk a lot about tanks in there as well. Jocko did a lot of work with tankers, so he's good to go.
It's a great book, and you don't have to care about the military. You don't have to care about law enforcement.
Nope.
I strongly encourage anybody to get the book or I'm doing the audio book. I've read the book once or twice maybe, which is going to shock you that a Marine can read. But after
Kathy read it to him.
Yeah, we had story time.
I did one night.
He's munching on crayons.
Yeah.
The purple one stays good.
But
but you inspired me the other day. I bought the audio book driving home, and I've read it twice, but I have the audio book now, so when I'm driving, instead of listening to radio or whatever, I can listen to that again.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with the book, a lot of it, you know, they talk about there's a military version of a concept that they're trying to talk about, but they've created, Jocko has created a consulting company, and they work a lot with private industry. Mm-hmm. And so every issue, leadership issue, communication issue that they've come across, logistics issues, translates not just to law enforcement, but also to the civilian sector. I mean, you could not carry a gun at all, and you can still relate, because people are people, and they need to be led.
Yep.
And the cool part of the book is they'll tell a military story of how this component of leadership helped, and then they'll talk about a corporation, they won't name it, and how that exact same issue arose, or a similar issue arose in the civilian corporate world, and that leadership trait or ability, once unlocked or enabled or taught, helped turn that company around, or that vice president.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good book.
It's the best book I've ever been read to. You've got that. Yeah. Well, you got anything else, Prez?
Just a point of clarification. At the very beginning, you talked about, I don't know what to call you. For me, it's not about titles. I may have a title, but that's just because I wanted to put myself in that position. I don't go around thumping my chest that, hey, I'm XYZ. It's Joe.
That's right.
And that
was Clint throwing it out there.
That's the thing that I have respected about you always.
Yeah.
Everybody has egos. Anybody that wants to be in the military or law enforcement has an ego. We all have them. People understanding how to have humility and professional and just completely humble. Joe's never been, well, I'm freaking president. You need to remember that, or and that's what's cool. And to your point, he and I were making headway. As I scratch my head, I don't have fleas. He and I are making headway at an agency in the Panhandle that's not a TMPA agency. He and I went up there and had a visit with a large unit there that's not a patrol unit. And on the way back, TMPA folks were calling, asking us how the meeting went. And I said, well, we met a dude there that is the man. And they're like, well, is he sergeant or is he? And we're like, no. Oh, well, how's he the leader? And he and I were both like, well, when we walked in there, he could have probably told everybody in there, let's go charge the mountain or let's go. He was clearly, wouldn't you agree?
The alpha, yeah.
I mean, he was clearly the leader. He didn't come in there and flex it or announce it. But when he walked in, everybody looked for him. Every discussion we had, he and I were like, well, what's your thoughts on this? All of them would turn to him. He was clearly the leader in the room. He had no title. I think there were some sergeants maybe and some other senior folks in the room. He clearly was the leader of that room with zero title. And it was I'm 1,000% certain that dude led that room. He has no title. And whether it's a trait he's always had or whether he doesn't know it, but that man led that room of probably 20 that showed up to that meeting with no title.
It was pretty cool. Yeah, definitely.
I guess if there's one thing that I'd like to leave you with, is what I feel like I am drawn to do now that I'm going to be off the board pretty soon as far as an active member, is continuing my work with Saving a Hero's Place.
We didn't even hit on that. No. I thought you were about to say go back to
regional director. No,
go back to working at Chippendales, and I'm like, don't go back to dancing at Chippendales, Joe.
I don't want to take your spot.
Actually, Tommy's going to come on next week.
Good.
Yeah.
You got in on the ground floor of that. How did you guys meet?
At one of our conferences.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Saving a Hero's Place.
I think he let me start building chairs just so I'd leave him alone.
That's awesome.
You had woodworking experience before, didn't you?
Just piddling around in my own shop. So I wouldn't consider myself a professional woodworker, that's for sure.
Saving a Hero's Place. Tommy Capel, San Antonio PD, left San Antonio PD to pursue his mission, building chairs. So if an agency loses an officer in the line of duty, you can reach out to Saving a Hero's Place and make a request. They will come build a chair at your agency. Beautiful. And I'm not into woodworking. What kind of wood? Cherry?
Cherry wood, yeah.
A cherry wood chair, beautiful, to put in your briefing room so that their place will always be held there. And, man, that is a freaking cool.
Yeah.
How'd you get involved with them so early? Because, I mean,
when he came to a couple of conferences, and once I found out what he was doing, I had just really started woodworking in my garage. And then
and being so close to San Antonio,
yeah,
probably.
Yeah. I went out to his shop when they were still living there in or just outside, actually right outside of Castroville.
Yeah.
And I guess I passed the test, and he let me start building them. So I've been building them on the side as I can to help him out.
I'll tell you what, that says a whole lot about your ability, though, because I would, if that were my company and that chair represented my work, to let someone build that chair and to ensure the quality, that says a whole lot about the trust he has in you and your ability as a woodworker, because I couldn't glue two popsicle sticks together and feel comfortable about it.
Well, I can tell you that I think I get more out of building the chair than anything.
Therapeutic for you?
It's very, very therapeutic because, I find myself thinking about who the person was that I'm building the chair for.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's definitely very special.
What have you always dabbled with that, or did you just wake up one day and think, I think for a hobby I'm going to dabble with some woodworking?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's awesome.
I tell everybody all the time, the only thing I ever knew how to do is put people in jail. I have no ability or skill outside of that. I'm telling you.
So do you build chairs? I mean, in addition to what he's doing on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No. Mostly what I build is the coin holder flags that
Okay.
seen at the conference.
So you're doing some of the additional stuff there at the house.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, I'm hoping we can get Tommy on here in the next couple of weeks. He's supposed to meet, he's on the road now with the RV.
World traveler.
And so maybe he's going to come on the Blue Grit stage.
And if there's ever a family that truly represents
Oh, man.
a mission, it is the Capels.
Yeah.
So the Capels.
Just so we're clear, Tommy is not the leader of that group.
Oh, yeah. You can tell it right off the bat.
Robbie.
It's Robbie.
Yeah.
Robbie doesn't have the title, but like we talked about before, she's clear.
She knows.
There's no doubt.
For you guys that don't know, the Capels left San Antonio. They went out to Slater's place, Relentless Defender. Felt they could fulfill their mission even greater. So they built a shop in an enclosed trailer and are literally driving around the United States. They've been up in Maine, New York, building chairs for way up in the Northeast. Last I heard is they may be headed all the way across the country to California. Please check out Saving Heroes Place, and if you have a place of passion where you'd like to wake up one morning with $50 extra, shoot at Saving Heroes Place for a great cause. Look them up, Tommy and Robbie Capel.
Yep. You got anything else, Perez?
No, sir.
Joe? Sorry. Clint?
Nope.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool episode. I've enjoyed working with you, man. It's not like we're going anywhere. We're going to be neighbors in New Braunfels.
Close enough.
There you go. Learned something today. Get off me.
Braunfels.
Make sure
it's
you
now
lock
Fils.
lock your truck.
2 E's.
Lock my truck with my key fob.
Yeah.
Braunfels.
Shut up, Clint.
Rapid fire?
All right. You're doing it because I always screw it up.
No, it's your time.
Favorite line from a cop movie or your favorite cop movie, favorite cop car, and your favorite adult beverage?
Damn, you did really good.
On
You've been
fire.
studying. You've been studying.
I think the other guys.
Yeah.
That's like 75% of the answers.
Oh, it's because
Any
it's a
particular
badass
line?
movie. Yeah.
What's that?
Any particular line? There's about 500 good ones in there, but any one that stands out for you?
I really like the desk pop scene.
Yeah, it's
I like
badass.
that line.
It's awesome.
So convincing.
Yeah. What's your favorite cop car? All-time cop car.
There's only one answer.
That's right. What is it?
Convict.
That's right.
Well, that's a wrap.
Yeah, that's right. It's got to be.
There's only one right answer.
That's right. Yeah. What's your favorite adult beverage?
Old fashioned.
Yeah. TMPA. That is the official TMPA drink.
But
Any particular bourbon in it?
you know the answer to that. Garrison Brothers.
Oh, thank God.
Oh, yeah.
What's your
yeah.
favorite?
Not your favorite.
Yeah.
Angel's Envy.
That's not Angel's Envy. That's for a different podcast.
We'll have a drink at the conference.
Not on Angel's Envy, we're not. There's
We
no
are.
way. Yeah.
Which,
Okay.
which
Yes, sir.
Garrison's your favorite?
Honeydew.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Yeah. It's not like the American honey. It's just too sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do some of those other ones. It's like drinking syrup.
We all can enjoy those together.
He'll be drinking his
Michelob Ultra.
Michelob Ultra and Miller 64.
my .08 alcohol beer.
Hey, it is what it is.
Just drink water. Just hydrate.
No.
Oh, for the conference attendees,
Bud Light.
if you
Yes.
can't handle whiskey like Tyler, this year, for the first time, Saturday and Sunday morning from 7A to 11A, we will have an IV vendor.
Oh,
Oh, that's right.
So if you'd like to come down on Saturday or Sunday morning, if you over conference and have too much conference one night, you can come down. They will take HSA, flex spending. They will take all of your various ways of payment.
What about EBT?
I don't think so. Yeah. I'll ask.
I'm going to give them my Lowe's card and see if they'll take it. But if you over conference one night, go downstairs and get an IV and refresh and rehydrate. When I got to looking into it, I know people People were telling me that they don't even overindulge the night before, and they get them just because you feel really, really good.
You charge to the room?
I don't know. I guess I don't know. You want to give everybody your room number?
I give them my room number, but they give Kevin Lawrence's room number.
A room number.
Yeah, a room number. Yeah.
Check out conference. Please check out Saving a Hero's Place and the great things they're doing over there. Come to conference and see Joe Tovar, and we look forward to seeing everybody there.
Yep. Take us out.
Tune in. Please continue tuning in. Share the episodes with friends, family. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications. He puts them everywhere. I don't ever know where he puts them.
The bell. What the hell is that? The bell.
I was thinking about doing the ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Please stay safe out there. Holler at a field rep if you need something. Call the 800 number if you need something. You got a friend doing the job without legal protection, please do what the two old timers did with Joe years ago and sit down and talk to him about providing legal protection for themselves. Stay safe out there. God bless each of you, and God bless Texas.